The further we get into 2023 and this recession that never seems to come, I continue to see headlines that make absolutely no sense compared to what's actually happening here in the Ocean City real estate market. Depending on the source you look at, the market's up and it's speeding up, or it's down and it's crashing. All of it is a little bit biased, at least. So in today's video, I want to take you through what we've seen so far in July so that you can get a sense for what's happening in the middle of the summer when things are usually slowed down, and see if there's any patterns we can take some put some faith in to see what's going to happen coming up. So let's dive right in. All right. So if this is your first market update that you've watched, again, I would encourage you to look at the one that I just did a couple of weeks ago to show you what happened in June as well. A lot of that data is going to be the same here, but that deeper understanding is important and the context is important for what's coming. So these videos, we start with what happened, talk about and show you what is happening, and then project out into the future. So with mortgage rates, they're a bit of anybody's guess as to what direction they're going to go in coming up. But there is no denying that they have increased significantly over the month of July so far. We're seeing rates typically above 7% at this point, depending on the product, depending on qualifications. But all in all, they're up nearly a half a point to almost a full point over the last 30 to 45 days. And that is a substantial increase. You would think that that would slow people down, that transactions would be slowing down. But as you're going to see here in a second, that is not the case so far. Now, inventory really hasn't changed much since the beginning of the month. We're up only a few homes, and we're still down 7% since the end of May. And as for days on market, it's going to be hard to tell now with so many transactions in process and under contract. They won't close for another few days or weeks. But all in all, I expect days on market to stay roughly flat. They may inch up again a tiny bit, but nothing to write home about. Prices, looking at what the median's going to be is a little bit tough at this point because all we know are the asking prices, not necessarily the sale prices. So I don't want to spend too much time on what's going to happen with the prices, but based off of what I did look at, I don't expect there to be a huge swing in either direction, in either category of single families nor condos. So if we look here, one of the things that I wanted to talk about specifically is the new sales. So ignore the heading on the top. That's why I just got confused. I'm going to have to change that. But the new listings here that have come to market. So a post that I made at the beginning of the week, usually in the past, over the past few years, we've seen an increase in new listings over July from June over the past 3 to 4 years of about 5%. Now, as I look at things as they stand now, we are on pace to see a slight decrease. And I actually saw more activity than I expected to over the last few days in terms of new listings that had us on pace for a 5 to 10% decrease. So what that tells me, and again, if we specifically look at 2022, July of 2022, we had a pretty big decrease from June. And I think everything that happened before that in 2019, we had a run up and an increase. 2020, we had an increase. In 2021, it started to flatten out a little bit. So to me, that's a pattern kind of coming to fruition, a newer pattern, so to speak, compared to what we saw in years past, pre-COVID. I think we're going to start to see the summer really flattening out and decreasing, which is what I had expected to be the case before I went and looked back at the data. And again, all that to say that data, even when I'm looking at it, when you start summarizing things, there can be a little bit of skewed result. So looking at recent events, while recency bias is a fear that I have sometimes of reading too much into something that happened recently and not taking the full context, it can skew things a little bit, not so much in this case. I feel comfortable saying that what we should expect here in the month of August would be an increase in new listings. And if we look back in 2022, that was the case. If we look back in 2021, that was the case. 2020, 2019. So we can say without a shadow of a doubt that if that does not come to fruition, if we see fewer listings in August than we saw in July, then that's going to be a really ominous sign for our inventory improving in the coming months. And I certainly hope that that is not going to be the case. As for the pending sales, again, I had expected that things would have slowed down a bit in the month of July, specifically with mortgage rates doing what they're doing. But here we are on pace not only to smash what had happened in July of 2022. If we were to double where we are now, we would be about 10% higher than we were in 2022 of homes that went under contract. But we're pushing the possibility of mirroring what happened in June, which if we look again over the past few years, that did happen in 2020 where the bars are basically even. But beyond that, we've seen a decrease from June to July. So time will tell how the second half of this month goes, but we are definitely going to see an increase compared to what we saw in 2022. And I was just showing a colleague of mine that from all the talk, all the context, like I mentioned at the beginning of this, all the articles, the headlines, you would think that the housing market's slowing down, right? Everybody's dying on the vine. There's nothing happening. We're now looking at an almost year over year identical pattern in terms of volume. What we saw once rates started going up after the beginning first quarter of 2022 to where we are now. All these months are basically aligning and maybe even increasing. We're even seeing slightly more activity in certain months than we saw last year. So for anyone to look at all of this and say the market's going to crash, I would tell you the exact opposite, right? We are seeing just enough activity and plenty of it to keep things stable, to keep it solid, and to keep prices where they are. Closed sales, we're seeing a reduction this month compared to what we had in the past few months, which is abnormal. And I think that has a lot to do with timing, specifically of a lot of new construction that's happening compared to what happened in the past. But that's not something I'm going to read too much into yet. Again, I look more and focus more on the pending activity than what's closing, because you could have a 30-day close, a 90-day close, a year close. That is something that means a little bit less to me than how many homes are actually going under contract in a given month. Here we go with inventory, at least where we stand now. Again, still fairly stable in the single family market. Prices, very stable. And again, this is a projected out number. We don't know where this is going to fall, but based off the asking prices of the few homes that are going to be closing in the rest of July, I would anticipate that this is going to be roughly flat again. And days on market, again, estimate here, but another inching up to back to normal in the 60s. As for condos and townhomes, again, still very, very low and consistently under 6 months of inventory, still very much a seller's market in the condo space. Prices continue to inch up. Again, this is an estimate here, but I don't foresee this changing too much in either direction over the coming days. We get more data, and days on market here, again, estimate, but continuing to trend up there. So what I want to spend a minute talking about specifically is what I've had a lot of conversations about with buyers. Some who are newer, there seems to be a mindset difference between the ones who are newer to the market and the ones who I've been working with for a while, some several years. Buyers who are newer to the market seem to have wrapped their heads around what's going on and have accepted the fact that where we are appears to be the new normal. Nobody has a crystal ball. No one knows what's coming. But because of the strength of Ocean City and what is happening in the mortgage space and the real estate space as a whole, people who follow me in the statistics, they feel pretty comfortable saying that this is where things are going to be for a while. So they are more ready to act. I've had a lot of clients who are really stuck. They have anchor points from 3 months ago, 6 months ago, 12 months ago, or even greater, of what a particular home would have cost them back then, what the mortgage rate was back then. And they have a lot more fear and resistance, I'll say, as to moving when the opportunity presents itself. I'm not going to sit here and tell you they should move or you should move and you should act quickly and ignore the financial expense that is going to come with buying now. You'll never hear me say that. But the fact that there are buyers coming into the market who don't have those hurdles to get through, they're not necessarily waiting or expecting for home prices to drop 5 to 10% before the value proposition of a property aligns with where they are. So my fear for people, and I'm just going to state this, is that the people who have already felt like they've been left behind might actually be left behind. If we're waiting for an improvement that is looking less likely to happen by the day, those people may end up with the countless others who have had the opportunity pass them by. And I will say one last thing before I wrap this up. The amount of clients that I've helped, I've only ever had one person who bought who was truly comfortable with the price that they paid. Every single person who I've helped buy a home here has been thrilled with their purchase, sometimes a day after, sometimes the day of, sometimes a week later. They've gotten around what decision they made and they've become happy with it. They're glad that they made the decision they made. A lot of those folks, had they not made the decision when they did, when the opportunity presented itself, they would not be able to buy right now. And it really sucks. The worst part of my job is having to have those conversations with people, being honest of here's what you're looking for. It unfortunately doesn't exist unless your budget can increase by a certain amount. That is the least favorite part of my job, bar none, because Ocean City is about dreams. It's about making memories with family and friends. And to have people miss out on that through no real fault of their own, besides potentially indecision or not liking the cloud of uncertainty that's sometimes there, really stinks to see. So if there's anything that I can do to help you with your mindset, with your decision-making process, with helping you understand really what's happening here and what the real possibilities are for you based off of what I'm seeing now and what I have seen. Let's have a conversation, and you can contact me any of the ways you see here. Always happy to talk. But the thing that I really don't want to see any more of is people missing the boat. In a perfect world, right? Things will come back down, rates will come back down, but reality, I just don't see where the inventory is going to come from. Interest rates are eventually going to come back down. I don't know how much, and I don't know when, but should that happen, demand will pick back up as well. And when demand picks back up without supply picking up, you know where that lands. And it's not a pretty picture. So with that out of the way, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. I hope you learned something from this. And if you did, do me a favor and hit that like button below. And if you don't already subscribe to, because I come out with information like this on a daily basis, weekly basis, I should say. And at the same time, I'm going to be bringing out a new bucket of content that has been asked for by a lot of people who do follow the content that I create. And it's about testimonials. It's about people who have gone through this process and what their experience was like, what they learned from it, real stories of people who successfully bought and or sold in Ocean City, so that you can get a look behind the curtain, right? What their thought process was, what the mental hurdles were that they got over and how they got over them. So that's it for today. Thanks for hanging out with me as always. I'll see you on the next one.